Hi, I'm Graham. In this video I'll show you how to effectively treat tennis elbow at home. Now, if you've had any experience with tennis elbow before, you'll understand that a lot of treatment is ineffective or just gives short-term relief, and because of that, tennis elbow can go on to be a severe long-standing problem. Now, the reason for this is that medics too often ignore a major source of stress on your elbow, and that stops it healing. Now, I'll certainly deal with that. Now, let's start with what tennis elbow is and what the medics too often miss. Now, if we look at this diagram, we can see that most of the muscles on the back of your forearm attach to the outside of your elbow, and the blue arrow shows the pull of these muscles. Now, you get tennis elbow when this pull becomes too much and the attachment becomes injured or inflamed. Now, this pulling can be both intermittent and constant. Now, the intermittent pulling comes from repetitive activities, while the constant pulling comes from the muscles being tight. Now, the reason the muscles are tight is usually that they have lumps we call trigger points, which are part of the muscles that have spasmed or cramped, forming a lump. Now, I'll link above to a video about them. Now, the mistake medics typically make is that they just think of the intermittent pulling from the repeated activities, and they even call it repetitive strain injury. Now, they don't understand that trigger points cause muscles to be constantly tight. Now, what happens is that they'll tell you to rest thinking that'll stop the pulling, but of course you'll still have the constant pulling, so your elbow won't heal. Now, that's when they really start losing the plot. Now, they think it's a problem with the elbow, so they'll start rubbing it, sticking needles, or zapping it with laser. Now, obviously with the constant pulling from the tight muscles, it still won't get better. Then they get even more off track, doing things like telling you to treat an overuse injury with exercise that use it even more. Now, don't worry though, in this video I'll be showing you a simple test you can use to see if you do have the constant pulling stopping your elbow from healing, plus the simple techniques to deal with it. Now, with that, let's get into the practical demonstrations. Now, standard disclaimer, this video is for general information only, not specific advice. Now, if you have tennis elbow, you'll be sore on the outside of your elbow, and it'll hurt anytime you do something that uses these muscles like gripping. Now, if you do have these symptoms, doctors will do two things to diagnosis. Now, first, they'll feel on the outside of your elbow for a bony lump. Now, this will be very tender, along with 1 to 2 centimeters towards your wrist, which is the tendon that attaches the muscles to the bone. Now, next they do what we call provocation test, which is simply doing things that will stress the attachment to see if it hurts. Now, if we pull a hand down like this, it stretches the muscle, and if we bring our wrist back like this against resistance, that tenses the muscle. Now, when we do these tests, we stress it just enough to confirm that it hurts, not too much that it causes damage. Now, next we're going to test for the cause that the doctors usually miss. Now, the way we test for this is very simple. We do the tennis elbow test, treat the trigger points so they temporarily relax, and then redo the test. If the elbow is less tender or the provocation test causes less pain, that means the tension from your muscles is causing problems. Now, with that, let's go through the practical steps one by one. Now, first we check the outside of the elbow, and then do the provocation test. Yes, we've got tennis elbow. Next, we do the trigger point examination. Now, they're tight lumps in your muscles that shoot pain. Now, the muscles we're looking at are on the back of your forearm and run from your elbow nearly to your wrist. Now, when we examined your elbow, we found the lump then 1 to 2 centimeters of tender tendon heading towards your wrist. Now, this part is injured, so we steer clear of it. Now, to do the trigger point examination, we start with the flats of our fingers using moderate pressure and systematically examine for any part of the muscle that feels tight or tender. Now, if we find a part that's suspicious, we use the tips of 1 or 2 fingers to examine deeper, looking for tight bands of muscle with tender lumps that shoot pain when you press on them. They're the trigger points. Now, one thing you may notice is you may get elbow pain when you press on the trigger points. Now, I've deliberately kept things simple and just talked about trigger points tightening muscles, pulling on attachments. But if you look at this diagram, you can see they also directly cause pain. Now, the X marks the trigger point, and the red is where they shoot pain. Now, you can see the one on the bottom shoots to the elbow. Now, this is another reason why medical treatments usually fail. Now, some of the pain is usually direct referred from the trigger points, which they don't consider, and of course won't go away with drugs, rest, or sticking needles into your elbow. Now, if we find trigger points, we need to confirm that they're causing a pull on your elbow, and the way we do that is to do the tennis elbow test, treat the trigger points, then retest. So let's show you how we treat the trigger points. Now, I'll show you two ways. Now, the first is very effective and you don't need any special equipment. It's a combination of massage and pressure techniques. Now, to start with, lubricate your forearm muscles. Now, you don't need anything special, just as long as it's slippery. Next, working towards your heart, using a thumb with moderate pressure, move slowly towards your elbow. Now, stop just before you get to the tender part at your elbow. Now, pretend you're squeezing out an old sponge. Now, work systematically to cover all your muscles, and if you come to a trigger point, all you need to do is stop, keep the same pressure on for 10 seconds, and then slowly move on. Now, you can repeat this process, working a bit deeper each time. Now, the second technique is easier and more comfortable and works even better, but you need a proper vibration massager like this. Now, they have a pad that sits on the surface and sends in therapeutic vibrations. Now, I'll link above to our guide with the full hints and precautions, but basically all you need to do is sit the machine on the trigger point for about 30 seconds. Now, we usually do this over cloth or clothing, but I'm just doing it like that to demonstrate more easily. Now, whichever therapy you use, trigger points are very stubborn, so you'll need to keep repeating to get rid of them properly. Now, I'll link more about that above. Now, the only other thing I'll mention is to do this more effective therapy, you will need a proper vibration massager, not a massage gun. Now, to explain the difference, vibration massagers sit on the surface and send in therapeutic vibrations, which your muscles will like very much. On the other hand, massage guns work like jackhammers punching into your muscles, which doesn't have the same therapeutic vibration effects and can hurt you. Now, I'll link above to how to get the machine you need. Now, that's our technique. Let's look at how you can use them to manage your tennis elbow. Now, we have 3 stages for recovery, plus need to look at prevention and some things that may affect your progress. Now, if your elbow is hurting all the time, that means it's quite inflamed or injured. Now, you'll need to get the stress off it and let it heal. Now, you do like the medics tell you and avoid activities that aggravate it, but we'll also start treating your forearm muscles to relax the tension. Now, you can use either techniques I've shown you, maybe 2 or 3 times a day. Now, remember though that you're treating the forearm muscles and don't touch the sore elbow. You just leave that alone and let it heal. Now, if you need pain relief, you're better off not going for the drugs. Now, if you do, you artificially suppress the pain so you can injure the elbow without knowing. The drugs have dangerous side effects, including killing and hospitalising thousands of people. And the most stupid thing is inflammation is part of the healing process. Suppressing inflammation suppresses healing. Now, if you need any pain relief, your best option is use an ice pack for 5 minutes each hour for about 48 hours. Now, the other unfortunate thing that I even have to mention is that you need to stop any of the inappropriate things you may have been advised that'll stir it up. So, that means don't rub the elbow, have needles stuck into it, or do exercises to stretch it, or any of the other totally counterproductive things people get told. Now, the next stage is when it only hurts when you do things. Now, during this stage, you need to keep up the treatment on your forearm muscles. Now, leave the elbow alone and gradually reintroduce activities. Now, the last stage is where your elbow is pain-free, you can do the things, but if you've had tennis elbow for a while, your muscles may have lost strength and flexibility. Now, this is when you can start using exercises. Now, exercises are totally inappropriate to fix a tennis elbow, but great for rehabilitation when it's all healed up. Now, if you get to tennis elbow nice and early, you should be fine. But if you've had it for a long time or had a lot of the treatments like rubbing the elbow or sticking with needles, you can get a build-up of scar tissue or adhesions that can stop it getting better. Now, if you do, you may need some specialised treatment for the elbow, but whatever you do, don't fall for the trap of just looking at the elbow and forgetting the basics. That's why people get into trouble in the first place. Now, as I mentioned, you're far better off if you can get to the tennis elbow early before it's had a chance to deteriorate, but by far the best thing to do is prevent it. Now, if you're doing repetitive things with your forearms, like working as a tradie, using a keyboard, or even playing tennis, you'll develop trigger points in your forearm muscles, and those muscles will gradually tighten. Now, you can take care of that by doing regular stretches and those forearm massage techniques I've shown you, and that should prevent tennis elbow in the first place. Now, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate, and thank you very much for watching. It has been most appreciated.